The case topic of this week's video is a criminal defense case where the defendant was charged with DUI involving an auto accident. When I got the discovery, it appeared that the evidence was fairly heavy against our defendant. There were potential witnesses and a ton of scene photographs to go through. The first thing I did was go over all of the discovery with a fine-tooth comb, looking for anything that obviously needed further review. One thing that stood out was the statements from the witnesses in the police report. These statements were very brief, and the officer did not get actual written statements from them. He just notated what they said in his report. So I wanted to get more information directly from the witnesses themselves. Now, I went out to the scene of the accident and I did a quick assessment of the area. I then notated where each of the witnesses lived and I marked those positions on a map for reference. While I was on scene, I placed traffic cones where the accident had actually occurred. I then went to the first witness's house and knocked on the door. There were two witnesses at this house, an elderly couple in their late 60s to early 70s. After identifying who I was and what I was doing, they were more than happy to have me come inside out of the rain and talk to them. Now, because I had two witnesses together, I asked if I could interview each of them individually at the kitchen table, which happened to look out toward the road where the accident had occurred, while the other one remained in the living room. As I do with all of my witness interviews, I first ask them if they remember the night of the incident. They both said yes. Then I asked them to tell me in their own words what happened. They both pretty much told me the same thing. Remember, these were two separate interviews separated from one another. This video is sponsored by OREP Insurance and Working PI Magazine. OREP is a leading provider of private investigator liability insurance. Visit orep.org for a quote today. Both witnesses remembered hearing the sound of brakes squealing and then a loud boom. Where were they when they heard this? I asked, sitting right there at the kitchen table. I then asked if they could point to where the accident was. I was then taken outside onto the patio outside the kitchen door to the far corner by some aspen trees, and they pointed over that way. As I peered through the trees, I could see my cones set up about 1,500 feet away. I then asked them if they could see the accident from their kitchen, and both said nope, they couldn't. The fence blocks everything on that busy road, and that's just fine. That's the way they like it. Now, in the police report, it stated that they thought they saw the defendant's vehicle cross the middle line right before the accident. When I asked them about this, they said, well, it was obvious the car crossed the line. How else would they have had a head-on crash right there? Further inquiry led them both to telling me that they had indeed not seen the accident. They heard it just moments before running outside to see the aftermath of the accident. I grabbed some photographs from inside the kitchen and from the patio in various positions in their backyard. I then went over these photographs with the witnesses to verify what we were looking at. The next witness was a lady and her 12-year-old minor daughter. They lived in an apartment complex on the other side of the road from the elderly couple. Now, after introductions, they invited me inside where it was warmer and where they could explain better what they had seen that night. Now, there are two witnesses at this residence as well, but one of them is a minor. So I don't interview her separately. I just let them sit together, and when the daughter has input, I just quickly jot it down in my notes. They were in the kitchen at the time of the accident as well. The screen door was open to their balcony, and the daughter was playing half on the balcony and half in the kitchen. When I asked the mom what she saw, she said, not much. I was cooking and there was a lot of noise outside. I asked my daughter what was going on. She got up, she looked over the balcony, and she said it looked like there might have been an accident. Okay, now back to the police report. It stated that the girl had seen the defendant's pickup cross the center line. But when I questioned further, what she saw was the defendant's vehicle across the middle line. I know this may seem like semantics, but it is important for all of the details in an investigation to be accurate. The patio had a solid patio wall about 4 foot high. The girl could barely see over the wall standing on her tippy toes, let alone if she was playing down on the ground. I also asked the girl if the orange cones that I placed out there were in the general area where the accident occurred, and she said, hang on, let me grab my glasses. I then inquired with her and her mother if she had been wearing glasses that night, and her mother said probably not. She doesn't usually wear them in the house. She just needs those for distance. Okay, now I grabbed some photos from their vantage point and then back out to the street at the accident scene. It's dark outside, it's raining just slightly, very similar weather conditions and lighting to the night of the accident. I have a high definition dash cam in my car with GPS enabled, which records my speed and the location and the time. I also have software that takes the video from that dash cam and it can create another video with the time, the speed, and the coordinates on it, and it overlays it onto a Google map. So I do a few run-throughs simulating the defendant's approach to the scene as well as the other vehicle's approach. This video is very telling as it is almost impossible for me to see where the lanes are while driving in either direction. The defendant had a passenger with him, and according to the police report and my interview with him, the work van that they collided with had originally crossed the middle line. There were no physical indications of this the night of the accident, but the video shows that it is very plausible that this could have occurred. The defense was that the work van crossed the line. The defendants took evasive maneuvers to avoid the accident and crossed the middle line. Then the van turned quickly and the accident occurred. The DUI charges come in because the defendant immediately asked for his attorney and refused roadsides when the police had arrived. This happens all the time. The police officer thought he smelled an odor of alcoholic beverage, and because the driver refused roadsides, he then arrests him for DUI along with a lot of other charges like reckless driving and things like that. Now, some may say, why ask for an attorney if you have nothing to hide? Well, this was a really bad accident, and several people from the van went to the hospital with serious bodily injury, as well the passenger and the defendant himself. He knew the ramifications were huge, so he did this to protect himself. Now, the work van also had several pieces of long boards on top of it. These were like 10, 12, 14-foot long 2x. In the police photos, you can see these boards laying on the roadway about 10 feet behind the defendant's car. This means the boards came loose from whatever means that they were secured on top of the van and they flew forward. It also appeared that the van pushed the defendant's car back several feet, which brings into question the speed the van was actually going. Now, tying all of these questions into the investigation and the fact that there were no witnesses, not one, including bartenders at the bar where the defendant and his friend were at for about 30 minutes prior to the accident, none of them saw him drink anything. It was pretty easy to get the case dismissed by the DA. Make sure you go over your discovery multiple times. I usually do a quick brief, still reading everything, going through everything quickly, and taking some notes. Then I go over it a second time very slowly. I will usually go over it again the next day or maybe later that day and still go over it very slowly, looking at everything and looking for anything that will help me. And then before I finalize my reports, I go over it one more time. Does this cost the client a little bit more? Absolutely it does, but it is well worth it. We make sure that we leave no stone unturned in these types of investigations. Always interview all witnesses in person if possible. Far too many times I have seen PIs take the word of the police. Their reports say all these people saw this happen. This is a slam dunk. No need to try to defend that. I have many cases over the years where I was able to bring huge question into the police reports and the police investigation that aided the defense. This case should have had written statements from the witnesses. I have no idea why the officer never got written statements from them. Believe me, when I got done with my investigation, there were written statements from all of the witnesses that I had interviewed. I went back out with another PI that was also a notary, and I asked the witnesses to write down what they had heard. Then I asked them to write down what they had saw. This was very helpful to our case as well.